use the strengths of your manifestation pattern to be able to actually successfully create the life you want and stop wasting your time on the things that really don't work for you. Let me start off by saying that thoughts don't actually create your reality. I'm sorry, but did that actually work for anyone? I mean, we have millions of thoughts per day, and if every single one of those thoughts actually came into fruition, our life would be complete chaos. And most of the things that we're afraid of, like the things we have anxiety about, or the things that could potentially happen that we really don't want to happen, we think about that, right? But that doesn't actually, most of the time, happen. And the same goes for the things that we want to create in our lives that we think about and we're like, oh, I want this to happen, I'm gonna think positively about it. Most of the time, that also does not happen. And that's just because manifestation is so much deeper than think positive, the universe doesn't hear no. All these things that we're taught are supposed to work typically don't. I've been through so many phases in my manifestation journey since I heard about The Secret when I was about 13, and now I'm 23. And now my view of manifestation, the law of attraction, have completely shifted. Honestly, I can even say they're just the complete opposite of what it was back then. Because back then I used to think, oh, I have to think positively, I can't think negative thoughts, the negative thoughts will manifest. I was blocking myself. I was living more in fear and anxiety about what would happen if I think a negative thought than actually receiving the things that I really, really wanted. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is To My Younger Self. My name is Yana, and I'm here to help you create the life that you love to wake up to. And the purpose of this channel is to basically share my experiences with manifestation and self-development. There are just so many tips and tricks that I don't see in the mainstream law of attraction manifestation media or social media that I feel like could really help people. Make sure to subscribe if you like this kind of content and if you like my vibe, and you can keep up to date with all the stuff that I post. So in this video, I want to tell you the top 5 things that I learned throughout this manifestation journey of almost 10 years that I realized actually do work and actually don't just change your life on the external. Like, you don't only manifest the physical things that you really want, the material things, but it really changes your inner state. It really is a path to freedom. I chose these 5 things because they create the foundation of manifestation. I think without these 5 things, the rest of the building blocks that you create don't work. The first thing that's super, super important is that we are all different, which means that our manifestation processes are also very different. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of techniques out there. You might have seen, people suggesting you should journal, people suggesting you should visualize, and I'm sure you probably dabbled in some of them. Or if you haven't, then, try it out. Maybe you'll find some that work, but you'll also find some that don't work. And that's natural, right? Like, not everything that we see out in the world is gonna work for us. Not everyone likes to play tennis, just like not everyone's good at drawing. Techniques are the same thing. Manifestation styles are very, very different, and we all have like a pattern that we came here with that we can create our life from. And once we figure out that pattern, we can manifest like this, like one after the other thing, and it just becomes much more of a flow. So that's why it's super important. Like, if you figure out your pattern, then the rest of the stuff just becomes so much easier. And that's why you see some people manifesting super easily and other people manifesting through a lot of difficulty or struggle. Or maybe you felt that for yourself, like some things in your life come super easily, maybe you tried a technique on it and it worked, and other things just don't work out or just have not been coming for you. The important thing here is to reflect on what your pattern might be. So begin noticing where things actually worked out for you and where you noticed manifestations coming through, and writing that down. Like, maybe start a log, or maybe once a week journal back, look at the week and write down what you actually created successfully. Let's say, for example, one day you manifested a cup of coffee for free and that somehow just came to you super easily. You write that down. What did you do to do that? Did you just speak it out to the universe? Did you write it down? Did you do a certain technique? What is it that you did before that? And what was your mental state when that came through and before, when you were manifesting it? Were you in complete surrender? Were you not caring about the outcome? Maybe you're even in an environment that made you feel good, that caused that good state of mind. So writing down the details of everything that worked out and how it worked out and what led you there will help you figure out your pattern. And if you have like 5 to 10 manifestations that actually work and you start writing them down, you can see the kind of links that all these manifestations have to each other. For example, maybe you'll see that more often than not, when something comes through, you surrendered, or more often than not, you took action. Maybe it was something to do with scripting, like you journaling and writing something by hand, or maybe it was just you visualizing. So figuring out exactly what worked for you and making sure that you use the strengths of your manifestation pattern to be able to actually successfully create the life you want, and stop wasting your time on the things that really don't work for you. Another point that's really useful for figuring out your pattern is to look at the things that you don't normally do, or like in general is a weakness for you. So for example, for me, surrendering and letting go of control works so incredibly well and is my pattern, because naturally I'm much more action oriented. Before I discovered that this is my pattern, I used to be quite afraid of letting go of control. I was so used to being in control and making sure that I get everything done that it was difficult for me to truly surrender. But once I leaned into the thing that I was afraid of, which is letting go of control and trusting that I can get to what I want with ease, that's when I figured out my pattern and realized that that is exactly the thing that I need to do to actually align. The second tip that I want to give you here is explaining what surrender actually really means. And surrender is not about not taking action. Surrender is about releasing control. I think surrender is a big one for everybody, because the majority of us tend to not trust that everything can just fall into place for us just like that, right? Because the general programming in society is that, we have to go out and work really hard to create a good life for ourselves. We need to study really hard to get into the right university and then get the job we want. Because of that productivity focused mindset that we all have, surrender is usually a big one for most people. But the important thing to understand is that surrender is not about not taking action. It's about when you take action, you make sure that the action that you're taking is not because you want to find your manifestation somewhere. It's not because you want to reach a certain outcome. You're taking that action because it feels good to you. It's something that you simply want to do, and maybe you don't even have an explanation for it. So typically with aligned action, you might hear stories like, oh, I went to the grocery store because I really was craving this one thing and then I met my soulmate there. That is aligned action. When you take action just because. When we're not in surrender and when we're trying to control a situation, it gives off a very desperate energy. Like we're really dog paddling to get to where we want to be. To manifest something, you have to believe it before you see it. Or you are in the true knowing that whatever it is that you want is already yours. And if you're in desperate energy, you're not giving off the vibe that it's already yours. You're giving off more the vibe that I can't have it, so I need to make it work for me. Or I'm not worthy of it because I need to make it happen. It can't just come in easily for me, right? It's figuring out what energy really underlies the actions and behaviors that you're taking. Now, the third tip that I want to give you is that honesty is really important in a manifestation process. The quicker you're truly honest about where you actually are in your journey, so what is happening in your life right now, and honest with how you're truly feeling, even if it's I'm angry or I'm sad or something negative, the quicker that you get to stepping into your authenticity, into your full authentic self, and really getting into the acceptance that this is where you are. And in that way, you become more open to allowing things in. And it might seem counterintuitive because we're used to hearing that we can't think negatively or we only think positively, otherwise the things that we want are being pushed away. If anything, that's a bit of a harmful way to think, because it stops us from truly being able to experience the emotions that come with being human, right? Allow yourself to truly feel that, to process it, to then release it, and let go of all the resistance that is holding you back. The more authentic we can get with ourselves, the more truth that we can find, the more truth and honesty that we can find in ourselves about how we're truly feeling and where we really are, the more in flow we can become with the universe, the more resistance we can let go of. Because trying to not look at something that's negative that's happening in our life, and that includes not allowing ourselves to feel negative emotions, we create resistance, right? It's like we're fighting ourselves. It's like we're in a battle with our own soul and emotions. And this resistance is basically an energetic block to the things that you want, Because imagine if you had what you want right now, you wouldn't be in resistance. You would be in flow, you would be in joy, you would be in enjoying that thing. Think about the way nature and our bodies and everything works. We are in constant flow, we're in constant flux. There's always change and there's always shifting and movement. We never stop. So the more you try to stop yourself from feeling an emotion or stop yourself from accepting where you are, the more you go against the nature of reality, the nature of nature, the more you create that resistance. If you can find that moment of stillness and presence in those emotions, you're no longer gonna numb them, and they're no longer gonna run your life. Allowing yourself to feel whatever it is that you're actually feeling, or whatever emotion is actually in your body, is actually a form of self-love, because you're not forcing yourself to be anything other than who you really are. And that form of self-love basically comes from that self-acceptance. I am who I am, and that's okay. I am who I am, and that's enough. I am sad, and that's enough. I'm angry, and that's perfect. Wherever we are is perfect. And even though we might be wanting to be somewhere else, that acceptance of I want to be somewhere else, I'm here now, will help you tremendously to take that next step into becoming free and to get to where you want to be. And that naturally takes me to the next point, which is number 4, and that is taking responsibility for where you are. Taking responsibility for yourself, which means accepting that whatever is happening to you and whatever you are going through and whatever is not working out and whatever situation you might be in, no matter how bad, is a situation that you got yourself into by making choices and going down certain paths that eventually led you here. And I know this one is a tough pill to swallow, because when we're in a difficult situation, we kind of tend to blame others for it. Or we might give excuses and say, well, I was late for work because there was traffic. Or this relationship didn't work out because the other person didn't put effort into it. It's really easy to blame other people or blame other situations or external circumstances to describe a bad situation that you're in. But that takes our power away. For example, if you say, I was late to work because of traffic, then you're giving your power away to that traffic. You're saying, I didn't get to work because something happened to me and I couldn't do anything about it. And yes, it might seem like the traffic, like you really couldn't drive through the traffic, like you couldn't fly over the traffic, things like that. But there's always a choice. The next day you can leave earlier. Or the next day you can take a different route. Right? That's the point. There's always a choice. Once you realize that you created your life and you created the reality that you're in, you have the full capacity and the full control to be able to change that and choose something different. You're no longer at the mercy of other people or external situations or excuses, essentially. You stop giving excuses for where you are, and you fully accept that you can create the reality that you want. Now, the last point that I want to leave you off with is something that I actually started with, which is your thoughts are not manifesting your life as much as you think they are. The reason I want to end with this one is because it ties in everything that I just talked about. Typically, when we believe that our thoughts create our reality and that negative thinking is bad for us, we become afraid of our own negative thoughts. Think about the amount of times that you might have thought a negative thought and then instantly felt fear or bad or guilty because you're like, oh no, they're gonna manifest and now I'm gonna have that terrible thing that happened to me. You're giving your power away to this limiting belief that your thoughts create your reality, and you're cultivating even more fear in your body and in your reality by resisting and pushing away your own thoughts, right? Like it's basically being at war within yourself. Your internal state is not at peace. Your internal state is not that of acceptance. And whenever our internal state is not in the state of acceptance, it's in the state of resistance. And that resistance is, again, what pushes our manifestations away. So realize that thinking negative thoughts is not actually going to manifest negative things. What really manifests is emotion and your subconscious mind that is so much more deep than thoughts are. So thoughts are very superficial. We can think them super easily, just like this. Anytime we can think any thought. But the subconscious mind is much deeper and much more difficult to access, which is actually a blessing because, like I said, imagine if you're thinking all these thoughts and they're all manifesting. It would be complete chaos. And with the subconscious mind, we are able to manifest much more reliably. But once we know our subconscious beliefs, limiting beliefs, and positive beliefs, we actually know much more reliably what we can expect from our reality. And it's not going to shift just like this, like thoughts shift. So, like an example is if we truly believe that we are lovable, we're going to experience much more love and much more acceptance in our life from other people around us and other situations around us. But if we feel that we're unlovable, we're going to keep attracting situations where we are triggered that way. We're shown that we're unlovable. And that is a great place to start figuring out what subconscious beliefs are actually playing out your reality and actually manifesting. And I do also want to add that it's not like thoughts are completely useless. Beliefs are just thoughts that you keep thinking, right? So you create a whole belief system by repeating a certain thought over and over and over again. You shouldn't be afraid of the single thoughts that you have throughout the day, or even the thoughts that you have multiple times throughout the week or months. But you can use your thoughts in order to cultivate a better belief system. So instead of fearing the thought or pushing it away or trying really hard not to think it, you can see the thought for what it is, accept that it's not a thought that you want, and accept that you can create your reality and decide what kind of thoughts you want, and then shift the thought to something else. It's about eliminating that bit of fear and resistance that you have towards thinking those thoughts. And over time, you definitely can influence your belief system through your thoughts, but thoughts are just such a tiny, tiny fraction of the manifestation process that they're not nearly as powerful as directly working with your subconscious mind. So I'll definitely be going much deeper in a lot of the topics that I touched upon today, because today I just kind of talked about the foundation, right? That there is so many more layers to the manifestation process that is important to integrate and implement if you really want to get into that momentum and into that flow. So definitely subscribe and like and keep an eye out for those videos to make sure that you're up to date with the most effective and efficient way to manifest, because who wants to waste their time on manifestation techniques that just don't work for them when you can dive straight into actually creating a much more empowered process in your life.